The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe. This book consists of 27 chapters, an epilogue, and author's note, and is 434 pages long. The following material appears on the dust jacket of the book. Wolfe's account of the Odyssey of Ken Kesey and his peripatetic commune of merry pranksters is an American classic, and by far the most penetrating piece of writing yet done on the ethos and dynamics of the hippie. Jack Kroll, Newsweek. We are working on many levels here, said Ken Kesey of his mystic brotherhood, the Merry Pranksters. Many levels, to say the least. For a start, Kesey's own life with the Merry Pranksters is perhaps the consummate example of a phenomenon that, in 1968, baffled the national imagination. The transformation of the promising middle-class youth with all the advantages into what was popularly known as the hippie. Kesey was more than promising. He was a golden boy of the West, a scholar, actor, star athlete, and one of the outstanding novelists of his generation, when he burst forth as an experimenter with powerful new hallucinogenic drugs, leader of the Merry Pranksters, and finally fugitive from the FBI, the California Police, and the Mexican Federales. Tom Wolfe, a journalist already widely known for his exuberant portraiture of the American bizarre, plunged into the psychedelic world of the pranksters and emerged with the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, a now classic portrait of the coterie which gave the hippie world of the 1960s much of its philosophy and vocabulary. He recounts their romp across America in the first psychedelic bus, their alliance with the Hells Angels, their Beelzebubling takeover of a Unitarian church convention, their conversion of the biggest anti-Vietnam rally of all time into a freakout, their zany games of hide-and-seek from the law in 2 countries, all with a depth of exploration and a stylistic inventiveness which make the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test one of the most memorable journalistic odysseys of our time. Tom Wolfe grew up in Richmond, Virginia, received a doctorate in American Studies from Yale University, and now lives in New York City. Parts of several chapters of this book appeared, in very different form, in the World Journal Tribune, Sunday magazine, New York, in January and February 1967. Copyright 1967 by the World Journal Tribune Corporation. Chapter 1. Black, shiny FBI shoes. That's good thinking there, Cool Breeze. Cool Breeze is a kid with 3 or 4 days' beard sitting next to me on the stamped metal bottom of the open back part of a pickup truck, bouncing along, dipping and rising and rolling on these rotten springs like a boat. Out the back of the truck, the city of San Francisco is bouncing down the hill. All those endless staggers of bay windows, slums with a view, bouncing and streaming down the hill. One after another, electric signs with neon martini glasses lit up on them, the San Francisco symbol of bar. Thousands of neon magenta martini glasses bouncing and streaming down the hill. And beneath them, hundreds, thousands of people wheeling around to look at this freaking crazed truck we're in, their white faces erupting from their lapels like marshmallows, streaming and bouncing down the hill, and God knows they've got plenty to look at. That's why it strikes me as funny when Cool Breeze says very seriously over the whole roar of the thing, I don't know. When Kesey gets out, I don't know if I can come around the warehouse. Why not? Well, like the cops are going to be coming around like all feisty, and I'm on probation, so I don't know. Well, that's good thinking there, Cool Breeze. Don't rouse the bastards. Lie low, like right now. Right now, Cool Breeze is so terrified of the law, he is sitting up in plain view of thousands of already startled citizens wearing some kind of 7 Dwarfs Black Forest gnome's hat covered in feathers and fluorescent colors. Kneeling in the truck, facing us, also in plain view, is a half-Ottawa Indian girl named Lois Jennings, with her head thrown back and a radiant look on her face. Also, a blazing silver disk in the middle of her forehead, alternately exploding with light when the sun hits it, or sending off rainbows from the diffraction lines in it. And oh yeah, there's a long-barreled Colt .45 revolver in her hand, only nobody on the street can tell it's a cap pistol as she pegs away, Q, Q, at the erupting marshmallow faces like Deborah Paget in Kesey's coming out of jail. Two more things they are looking at out there are a sign on the rear bumper reading, "Custer died for your sins," and, at the wheel, Lois's enamorado Stuart Brand, a thin blonde guy with a blazing disc on his forehead, too, and a whole necktie made of Indian beads. No shirt, however, just an Indian bead necktie on bare skin, and a white butcher's coat with medals from the King of Sweden on it. Here comes a beautiful one, attaché case and all. The day is done, resentful look, and the shoes, how they shine. And what the hell are these beatnik ninnies? And Lois plugs him in the old marshmallow, and he goes streaming and bouncing down the hill. And the truck heaves and billows, blazing silver red and day-glow, and I doubt seriously, Cool Breeze, that there is a single cop in all of San Francisco today who does not know that this crazed vehicle is a guerrilla patrol from the dread LSD. The cops now know the whole scene, even the costumes, the Jesus Christ strung-out hair, Indian beads, Indian headbands, donkey beads, temple bells, amulets, mandalas, God's eyes, fluorescent vests, unicorn horns, Errol Flynn dueling shirts, but they still don't know about the shoes. The heads have a thing about shoes. The worst are shiny black shoes with shoelaces in them. The hierarchy ascends from there, although practically all low-cut shoes are unhip. From there on up to the boots the heads like. Light, fanciful boots. English boots of the mod variety, if that is all they can get. But better something like hand-tooled Mexican boots with Caliente-dewed AAA toes on them. So see the FBI, black, shiny, laced-up FBI shoes, when the FBI finally grabbed Kesey. There was another girl in the back of the truck, a dark little girl with thick black hair, called Black Mariah. She looks Mexican, but she says to me in straight, soft Californian, "When is your birthday?" "March 2nd. "Pisces," she says. And then, "I would never take you for a Pisces." "Why?" "You seem too solid for a Pisces." But I know she means stolid. I am beginning to feel stolid. Back in New York City, Black Mariah, I tell you, I am even known as something of a dude. But somehow a blue silk blazer and a big tie with clowns on it and a pair of shiny, low-cut black shoes don't set them all to doing the varsity rag in the head world in San Francisco. Lois picks off the marshmallows one by one. Cool Breeze ascends into the innards of his gnome's hat. Black Mariah, a Scorpio herself, rummages through the zodiac. Stuart Brand winds it through the streets. Paillettes explode. And this is nothing special, just the usual in the head world of San Francisco, just a little routine messing up the minds of the citizenry en route, nothing more than psyche food for beautiful people, while giving some guy from New York a lift to the warehouse to wait for the chief, Ken Kesey, who is getting out of jail. About all I knew about Kesey at that point was that he was a highly regarded 31-year-old novelist and in a lot of trouble over drugs. He wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1962, which was made into a play in 1963, and Sometimes a Great Notion, 1964. He was always included with Philip Roth and Joseph Heller and Bruce J. Friedman and a couple of others as one of the young novelists who might go all the way. Then he was arrested twice for possession of marijuana in April of 1965 and January of 1966, and fled to Mexico rather than risk a stiff sentence. It looked like as much as 5 years as a second offender. One day I happened to get hold of some letters Kesey wrote from Mexico to his friend Larry McMurtry, who wrote Horseman Pass By, from which the movie HUD was made. They were wild and ironic, written like a cross between William Burroughs and George Ade, telling of hideouts, disguises, paranoia, fleeing from cops, smoking joints, and seeking Satori in the ratlands of Mexico. There was one passage written George Ade fashion in the third person as a parody of what the straight world back there in the USA must think of him now. In short, this young, handsome, successful, happily married, 3 lovely children father was a fear-crazed dope fiend in flight to avoid prosecution on 3 felonies and God knows how many misdemeanors, and seeking at the same time to sculpt a new Satori from an old serf. In even shorter, mad as a hatter. Once an athlete so valued, he had been given the job of calling signals from the line and risen into contention for the nationwide amateur wrestling crown. Now he didn't know if he could do a dozen push-ups. Once possessor of a phenomenal bank account and money waving from every hand, now it was all his poor wife could do to scrape together $8 to send as getaway money to Mexico. But a few years previous he had been listed in Who's Who and asked to speak at such auspicious gatherings as the Wellesley Club in Dala, and now they wouldn't even allow him to speak at a VDC, Vietnam Day Committee, gathering. What was it that had brought a man so high of promise to so low a state in so short a time? Well, the answer can be found in just one short word, my friends, in just one all-well-used syllable: dope. And while it may be claimed by some of the addled advocates of these chemicals that our hero is known to have indulged in drugs before his literary success, we must point out that there was evidence of his literary prowess well before the advent of the so-called psychedelic into his life, but no evidence at all of any of the lunatic thinking that we find thereafter. To which he added, "Oh, yeah, the wind hums time ago, the rafter drums and the walls see. And there's a door to that bird in the appling sky, time ago by. Oh, yeah, the surf giggles time ago, of under things killed when bad was banished, and all the doors to the birds vanished, time ago then." I got the idea of going to Mexico and trying to find him and do a story on young novelist real-life fugitive. I started asking around about where he might be in Mexico. Everybody on the hip circuit in New York knew for certain. It seemed to be the thing to know this summer. He is in Puerto Vallarta. He is in Ajijic. He is in Oaxaca. He is in San Miguel de Allende. He is in Paraguay. He just took a steamboat from Mexico to Canada. And everyone knew for certain. I was still asking around when Kesey sneaked back into the U.S. in October, and the FBI caught up with him on the Harbor Freeway south of San Francisco. An agent chased him down an embankment and caught him, and Kesey was in jail. So I flew to San Francisco. I went straight to the San Mateo County Jail in Redwood City, and the scene in the waiting room there was more like the stage door at the Music Box Theater. It was full of cheerful anticipation. There was a young psychologist there, Jim Fadiman, Clifton Fadiman's nephew, it turned out, and Jim and his wife Dorothy were happily stuffing 3 I Ching coins into the spine of some interminable dense volume of Oriental mysticism, and they asked me to get word to Kesey that the coins were in there. There was also a little round-faced brunette named Marilyn, who told me she used to be a teeny grouper hanging out with a rock-and-roll group called the Wild Flowers, but now she was mainly with Bobby Peterson. Bobby Peterson was not a musician. He was a saint, as nearly as I could make out. He was in jail down in Santa Cruz trying to fight a marijuana charge on the grounds that marijuana was a religious sacrament for him. I didn't figure out exactly why she was up here in the San Mateo jail waiting room instead, except that it was like a stage door, as I said, with Ken Kesey as the star, who was still inside. There was a slight hassle with the jailers over whether I was to get in to see him or not. The cops had nothing particularly to gain by letting me in. A reporter from New York. That just meant more publicity for this glorified beatnik. That was the line on Kesey. He was a glorified beatnik up on 2 dope charges, and why make a hero out of him? I must say that California has smooth cops. They all seem to be young, tall, crew-cut, blonde, with bleached blue eyes, like they just stepped out of a cigarette ad. Their jailhouses don't look like jailhouses, at least not the parts the public sees. They are all blonde wood, fluorescent lights, and filing cabinet tan metal, like the civil service exam room in a new post office building. The cops all speak soft Californian and are neat and correct as an ice cube. By the book. So they finally let me in to see Kesey during visiting hours. I had 10 minutes.